I gotta push my button, talk 6 inches away from the thing there. Get a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Kate, second by Josh. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any presentations? No, seeing none. Public comment, if anything that's not on the agenda? No public comment? No? Do you have something you wanted to
No,
talk about?
you're on the agenda. Yep.
Oh, you are?
Yep.
All right, nope. Motion
If
to,
it's about the mailboxes, you're on the agenda.
well, I assumed that you were here, so that's why, okay. All right. Anybody need to review anything on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Struggling.
All right, is there any public hearings? No. Anything for general business? No. Go into reports. And we'll start with administration and the mailbox, I assume.
So this is an update for the council. Keep in mind that the council has been aware of it. It's been related to the William Street mailbox concerns that were raised by Marty and by Charlie at previous meetings. Staff has looked into the issue, and so the memo that you have just basically outlines a little bit more information, because previously when I showed it to the council, it was spontaneous, and there's a lot of information thrown around, and so this kind of summarized information related to the topic. It put it into a better format and findings of staff. Long and short, Mr. Regis and Mr. Sawyer came and expressed concerns related to a set of mailboxes, a mailbox bank that was located between their two homes. Basically regarding the location, and they expressed various impacts or nuisances associated with the location of that mailbox bank. And they were asking generally for the city to do something about it. Could the city relocate it? Council directed staff to look into the issue, which we did. A couple basic findings, and Brandon, who's been working on this issue, can elaborate on it. But basically, that mailbox bank has been essentially in that same location for at least 15 years. The city does not regulate the location of mailboxes to a very large degree. It's generally between the private property owners and the USPS with regards to where they're permitted to be located. There were concerns related to the platted right-of-way. It's been referred to as an alley. It is not the platted right-of-way in which they are generally located, which is between Mr. Sawyer's house and Charlie's property. And in that particular location, there was concerns about traffic coming through. It was our understanding in discussions that traffic that came through and was driving on Mr. Sawyer's driveway primarily occurred because the mailboxes were forced them left to right. Primarily occurred during the reconstruction project and hasn't occurred since. One of the things that we need to point out is that there is no inherent right for the property owners to the west to access their property through this platted right-of-way. It's not an improved right-of-way. They don't have inherent access, so they're essentially driving through Mr. Sawyer's and Mr. Freegis's yards when they're doing so. The other thing that we found is we investigated the potential for relocating the mailboxes. The postmaster responded that you can relocate them, but they need to remain on the same side of the street because of the route and which direction the mail carrier is traveling. So they could be relocated, to the north or to the south, so either further into Mr. Sawyer's yard or further into Mr. Freegis's property, but can't go to the other side of the street, which was one of the potential solutions that was identified, because across the street there's a wetland where there isn't and isn't likely to be any development. The USPS informed us that that's not possible. So based on our particular findings related to this, staff plans, unless otherwise directed by the council, to approach the property owners and advise them that we could scrunch the mailboxes closer together. Upon detailed review, we found that they're a couple feet, the mailbox bank is a couple feet longer than it was previously. When we removed them for our reconstruction project and put them right back, they're slightly further apart. The contractor put a little extra space between some pieces of it, so we could scrunch it back together for them. Aside from that, the issue of the mailboxes really isn't a city issue, and if we look at relocation, that really would be a matter between the private property owners as neighbors and their discussion with the USPS. We don't see that there's a role for the city in that there isn't an issue that we regulate, there isn't anything that we permitted, and there's nothing that we specifically caused, other than the mailboxes are a few feet longer than they were before. And like I said, we could go back and squish it together. So that would be our intent on how to proceed and respond to the property owners unless the council provides other direction.
Other than property owner's responsibility.
And just to recap, I mean, we as a city are not saying that they can do, I mean, the options are there for the property owners to do what they need to do as long as they comply with whatever the USPS and postmaster requires on their end, and then they're not over any setbacks or, you know, any of the right-of-way stuff, but,
Very limited regulation that
Right.
we have related to the location of the mailboxes. It's primarily gonna be related to the property owners working with the USPS regarding an alternate location if they wanna try and move them someplace else.
They make a comment?
There is something different though, on, since you put the curb and gutter in, before there was no curb and gutter whatsoever. So as the mailboxes were, like you're saying, were scrunched together, there was still alleyway left to drive on. Plus there was room on Sayers without going all the way onto his asphalt. Right now, as your curb and gutter is put 6 inches high, it drops down to a 16-foot wide easement for your alleyway. And then it once again goes back up before it gets up to Marty's driveway. That makes it impossible to come out of that alleyway without trespassing with Marty's approach. So that's what the big difference is now.
I'm gonna defer to the city attorney, but when we looked at this previously, those individuals don't have a right to drive through there. They're essentially driving through your yard, so they can only do it with your permission.
Well, they just removed a large tree from the next door neighbor up there. There was trucks, there was scaffolding, there was all kinds of equipment. And they used that alleyway to get that tree out of there.
Now, if the tree, was it the city that removed it? Was it a
Private
utility?
party. Private party.
Okay, again, they don't have the right to,
You have no other
Because I
access to
pulled
it
it up.
other than that public access.
but they would need to approach you. It's no different than somebody driving through somebody else's backyard. It might be the only way to get in if they wanted to bring heavy equipment in, but it doesn't mean that they have the right to drive through there.
Then what is the easement held for by the city? What is that about?
For utilities, right-of-way and access. We could choose to improve it in the future, at which point it might become an alley, in which there would be an inherent right for them to drive through there, but it's not currently improved.
The utilities, residential gas, they do use that.
Yep.
I've seen it various times.
And they have, and they can. And just like easements around properties, the city can go in there with equipment and do what we need to do because we hold it. But the general public, the owners of those properties themselves, can't drive through there, let's say, to park their camper or boat and pull it through there.
Through the years, I owned that house, or I grew up in that house virtually. People have used that alley through my whole life, in my whole 69 years of being on this earth. I've seen very many times Mr. Max would go up there, he would have an extra spare car, he'd drive that up the alley and put it back there. He would have utility sheds up there that he'd have to access with trailers, and he would do that.
We understand that. We're just simply saying that they don't have an inherent right to do that, and if you don't want people driving across your property, you can tell them not to drive, or it's across that yard area of yours. You still have an underlying right underneath that platted right of way. You can tell them not to.
And then the other thing was, as he aged, the ambulance used that alleyway too, to take people out of that house.
Understood. Emergency services may come through there, but there aren't ambulances going through there all the time, and that situation is no different than any other property. If they need to get to somebody's backyard, they'll do what they need to do and can do in order to I'll let the chief of police maybe respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the most common approach, but yeah, there's been plenty of times over the years we've driven to various people's
I
yards,
know,
but.
I did see squad cars and ambulances up at that residence different times.
Right, but I guess since I've been here, I'm not aware of us driving up through there for
But
any
yeah,
reason.
the big thing that changed was your curb and gutter coming up 6 inches. Don't allow vehicles to partially drive on your public property or whatever you call it, and partially on Marty's. Now you have to completely enter into Marty's driveway or in my driveway to get off of it.
Well, and I think, if I may, I mean, this is where it's confusing or whatever, the lack, my understanding is it's not legally, technically an alley, correct? It's, I mean, so, like, I couldn't just decide to drive on there myself, but Corey could for some utility thing from a city perspective. And so that's where we keep saying, I mean, it's not an alley, as far as I understand. So the curb and gutters actually are there appropriately to, because it's not, if it was technically an alley, it would have been built differently, because we would have had to comply with the improvements or whatever. So I guess either I'm confused or like just how we're talking about it feels.
The alleyway, what we're talking, as what I'm talking about, does have a approach to it. There is no curb and gutter.
We made a decision to put a
Yeah,
cut
no, I see
for
it.
all the unimproved alleys through there, because there are occasions where utilities and other people need to go through there, possibly to do maintenance. We don't want them tipping the curb or having other issues. So we did make that decision, but the mailboxes are right in front of that, to Charlie's point. But what this really comes down to is people are driving through the yard, but they don't have a right to drive through the yard
Or his permission.
without the permission of
But
the
the
property
problem
owners.
is with the curb and gutter cutout as it is, where they should be entering, the mailboxes are blocking that. So they have no other choice but to drive either on Marty's or mine.
When you say they, who is they?
Various
Because
people, there are
if it's not
tracks
the
in
city,
that
they don't have a
alleyway.
right to go there unless you allow them.
Well-
That's where it's at.
It's a rental house, so I'm not there all the time, but there are tracks there. When I mow the lawn, when Marty mows the lawn, there are tracks there
So they're driving over onto your driveway
to get to the
is
mailbox.
it's no different than them driving on the unopened street that's there. Both of those areas are your property, and you get to treat them the same.
But before, there was no problem, when there was no curb and gutter cutouts.
So, can I just ask a really dumb question? Could we, how much space is on either side of the drive that goes up the alley that's not really an
All
alley?
the mailboxes are on mine.
Okay, could you take some of them and put them on the curb side and then take the other half and put it on the other side where the curb is, and then that opening is still there, and then they're not going onto your driveways?
There's very limited. I think on Marty's side, there's maybe, from what I would call the alley line, if I could pass to say that way, to his driveway is maybe, there's only like a 4-foot bump up between them two areas, between the so-called alleyway and his driveway.
So this is only like, yeah, I know, I'm just looking at this, wondering if
I
we
think
can
just get a sign
swoosh.
that says no trespassing and post it.
Well, and I say don't move the damn mailboxes. People shouldn't be driving in your yard anyway. I mean, it'd be like them driving up in my yard. I'd be looking at them like they're nuts. I'd call chief and be like, I gotta, like, it just, it boggles my mind that like,
I think
that
the
this-
issue
yeah.
here is that there's a practice that may have been established
Mhm.
over the years, but it was done with the permission of the individuals now.
No, the permission was never given by me or my
Well,
boss.
but then you have the ability to tell them not to go through. Now, there are
Everybody was
people-
under the intent, the thought that it was an alleyway because Marty had a trailer parked 2 feet into that area, and he got a letter from the city stating you gotta remove this here.
that is correct. You can't park in rights of way, and you have to be parked on your own property. That's a separate issue. There are people that have rights to be through there, the utility companies that are working in the right of way, the city, people that have infrastructure, have need to do work in that. But the general public, a neighbor, doesn't have the right to drive through there to get access to their property.
Well, and I would say the city or utility companies aren't just gonna drive through there unless they have specific work to do either. So it's not like just a road or, you know, anyway, so it's gotta be for a purpose.
It would be similar to the 20-foot of easements you have between any other two single-family homes. The utilities, the city, other people have rights to go in there and do work, but they don't have the right to just,
Pull
other
up
people
and-
don't have the right to just drive through there. So it's a right-of-way that we have through plat, but it's not an improved right-of-way.
But the bottom line is, they can't not get on William Street without driving on Marty's driveway or driving across my lawn with the mailboxes there because of the bump up. You can't march across that bump up. Right now, there's a 16-foot wide approach there for the, what I call the alley. And then it comes up for a distance and then drops down for Marty's. And likewise on my side. It's laid out just as it's a regular approach, but you can no longer, they can't use that because of the 6-inch bump.
So staff's recommendation would be on this, that if they feel that they want to allow this to happen, and they feel the mailboxes are in the way, the private property owners can choose to relocate the mailboxes to whatever location that they would like to. But that would be between them, their neighbors, and the post office.
What's odd about it, I owned that house for many years. The mailboxes just appeared there one day without my permission, without nothing. As you say, years ago. And they just kept running.
Well, then I say just move them wherever,
Put 'em back
with
in-
correct permission from those people who own the, I mean, no,
Go in my mailbox.
I'm sorry, I don't do that.
I wish we had jurisdiction
And then
over
the
it
chief
too.
will say, well, Amanda told
I
him.
have my own
That's
issues
fine.
without taking care of mailboxes in the city.
And I think from a staff standpoint, Charlie, we believe you, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a city problem. That would be between you and the owners of those
Well,
mailboxes.
where the city problem comes in is your curb and gutter, how it got laid out, and that becomes your city problem. From there on in, you're no longer capable of entering William Street.
Because they
You
shouldn't
must
be. They should be going the other way.
trespass.
They should be going up the front of the house or to Webster. Why would they be coming down to William?
Going up to Webster, there's a pretty good size inlet up in the middle of that hill. You have to drive around to one side or the other, so they choose to come down to Williams. That's why. It's hard to access it from Webster Street side. And that's why there's tracks. in there.
You know who they are?
Tracks with a mow lawn, Marty mows lawn.
Well, I would think that there's only a handful of homes in the area that would potentially access it for their property. You could talk to your neighbors and say, hey, I don't want you driving across my property, and you don't have a right to, and you can call the city and they'll back me on that.
Well, yeah, we would enforce that. I mean, that's,
I think what's problematic is that there are mailboxes in front of the entrance to this.
but it's not an
And your
entrance.
curb and
That's the
gutters
key.
would change
Like,
it.
it's not an entrance. It'd be like putting mailboxes in the middle of my side yard. Well, you can put them wherever you want in my yard.
But it
because
is an entrance. There's a
But-
But it's
cutoff.
not an
It's in
entrance.
front of the right of way.
It's a future, though. That'd be like saying that, you know, James or wherever we haven't extended it yet is technically a cutout for a road. Doesn't mean people should be driving through there to get out to 91 or something.
You see a cutout,
I-
I'm sure you've seen that before, they do enter it. There's no two ways around. If you would run the curb and gutter 6 inches high all the way across, I wouldn't be
Charlie,
standing
would it
there
make you
now.
better if we take the cutout and we put high back curb across the entirety of it?
Yeah.
For all I'm concerned, there's better spots than that because two things, it encroaches on me moving snow by the garage because they keep crawling always to the north all the time. In fact, right now, I got a temporary one sitting in a 5-gallon pail.
We don't
I see.
dispute that, Charlie, but the reality is, that's not a
was wondering
city issue. Those were decisions by private property owners, and you as a private property owner where they're being located adjacent to it, it's between the property owners. We don't do mailboxes.
Cut them all down.
The only thing that we touched, there's only two things we touched in the process. We put a curb cut on that right of way because people may need to access it to do work, the people that have legitimate right to be there. Now or in the future, or it may be approved in the future, which we have no current plans to do. And we removed the mailboxes during the reconstruction project, and we put them back where we removed them from. Only difference is they're a few feet wider than they were before, which we are happy to scrunch them back together if that's what you and Marty would like.
they're quite a bit wider, because they're, like I said, they're taking up 3/4 of your public right of way. So there's no room to sit for cars with the curb cut out there as it sits.
We
You can't get around it. So it
can't control
forces
the
them.
number that have grown over time, but the number that were there at the time before the project, and the ones that are there after the project, we can take and scrunch them back together to where they were before the project. We can return it to exact condition as close as we can get.
Or we could take out the cutout and put in a curb.
Or an additional expense to the larger public, we can cut out that ramp and put it there, and then it would clearly communicate to people that you shouldn't be there if that's what you're looking for.
I always think the wider mailboxes also communicate that though too. So that's why I understand it can be frustrating if people driving on your property, but like Josh said, maybe a no, or Andrew, did you say no trespassing sign or something? Yeah.
And there's options for, and I've spoken with Mr. Sawyer that certain landscaping items could be done that would discourage people from driving through there within their yard area, et cetera. And we would be happy to get feedback on what you might be able to do that wouldn't interfere with the people who legitimately need to be there, but might discourage people going through.
Could we throw a wise cam up on that garage right there and we could, for a week, and see if permission of, or if you put up a camera on the garage shed thing there, and we could see who's,
I don't know if a week would be accurate, though, 'cause
well, maybe a
it's
month,
sometimes-
whatever,
you know,
but,
Sometimes you see a tracks during the month, sometimes you might see 2 sets of tracks in 1 week.
What are they doing?
It's nothing like it's a public thoroughfare that's being used day in and day out.
Agreed. All I can speak to is, if it was me, I'd go talk to my neighbors and I'd say, hey, you can't be driving through the yard, and
and if they're pissed about it, say it's the city's fault because it's not an alley. And, yeah, I don't know.
End of the day, you control it. It's yours to control.
I have no desire to control it anyway. I have no desire to get calls from utility trucks that need to be in there and want my permission to drive through there. I have no desire to have that responsibility. It all changed since the curb and gutter in the street come to life. That's where changes come about. And that forced traffic one way or the other is what it did.
Tom said, Dr. Neighbors, tell them to do them.
But
you know,
it's
You
still,
and me both- you and me both know that, that's.
it
a
still
waste
doesn't
of
get to the
time.
point that public utilities and city need to get through there, so, no.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
we take the general public out of it, so you stop, we stop, everybody stops driving on there, other than those that are allowed to drive in that right away. It still means, because of the way it's,
These
where the
still have
mailboxes
to- no
are,
matter
so
how
you guys
much
can move the
they have.
mailboxes, talk to the property owners, move the mailboxes and allow for that space, would be one
Why
option.
should I endure a hardship? I didn't space the mailboxes up wider, I didn't direct the curb and gutter to go up and down and make designated approaches. I didn't do that.
Well, and I think,
There was no curb and gutter previously, then it wasn't such an issue. I didn't bring this problem on, neither did Marty.
and neither did the city either,
No,
because
no,
we
you
just
guys
put,
put it
no,
in
no,
curb
but we
and
put it according to the way that it's supposed to be. So, and so we did it the way it was supposed to be, so we did it right. Now, those mailboxes arguably shouldn't have been there, or could have had other
They shouldn't have
places.
been there to start with.
Right, again, which is something we don't regulate, and then the postmaster really doesn't care about either, as long as they're on the same side of the street as, you know, the route, so it doesn't screw that up, but,
you could move the mailboxes
or
to the north
the
of your
residents could
driveway
move them.
into your front yard, and they would be out of the way of the alley, and they would be on the right side of the street.
Where would I come off moving mailboxes? It ain't my problem. The
It's-
city changed stuff, I didn't. I didn't change it.
Nope, but the changes the city made are normal construction of a road, and the problem that you're citing is people going where they shouldn't be in the first place.
Well, then you better have somebody sit there all day and make sure they catch it once every 6 months. I don't think Marty appreciates having people come across his driveway, and I really don't appreciate having tracks coming across my garage.
And I wouldn't either, but if it happened, I would take measures to make sure that it doesn't happen. I'd remove mailboxes to give them a permissible way to go where they're not supposed to be going. Or I would talk to the people that are likely driving through there and indicate my displeasure pleasure with it.
I wanna see you talk to the next door neighbor and he'll look at you and say, you're stinking nuts for this. I'm driving through an alleyway, come on.
But it's not an
Unless you see
alleyway.
them, unless you catch them there, they're gonna deny it all day long. And I have no desire to visit with neighbors.
Can't control human nature. If you have somebody driving through there and you know who it is, you can contact law enforcement.
I have no idea, all I see is tracks. And when it's different, since the street's been done, that's why I'm standing here, it's different.
So ultimately, the question for the council is whose responsibility it is to address the concern.
On my part, I didn't change it, I made it party center.
Would you be okay if they were moved to the north side of your driveway?
I really don't care to look at them on the outside driveway.
How many of those mailboxes actually live on William Street?
I don't think none. They're all off St. Mary's,
So,
that's where you belong.
so is there a, I'm, just bear with me, guys, I'm sorry. Is there a way to just take those mailboxes and go put them in front of the houses that they belong in front of and have them put them in where they belong?
That would be the cure to the problem.
Is there anything that prevents anybody from, I mean,
Community service day.
well, just to remove stuff, if I had mailboxes, but I don't, mine are across the street, so I'm trying to like equate this to me. If somebody just threw a mailbox in my yard, would I be out of line violating any law, whether it's USPS or anything? If I say, get the thing out of my, and I pick it up, I chop it down with my whatever chainsaw and set it, you know, in their front yard or on their front porch.
I mean, that's kinda what I'm
Here's
saying.
your
Can we
mailbox.
I have
legally do
mailboxes
that?
in my
So
yard.
we can't speak to USPS regulations and federal law that
There's
might
nothing
apply
in
to
city
you.
ordinances that
It's
I would
not
get in
a city
trouble and
thing.
I'd have our Elko New Market PD show up and.
But we don't regulate it.
Mhm.
So from a city regulation side, if somebody did that and somebody didn't like it, it would be a civil issue, or it might potentially be an issue with federal post office regulations or federal law, which we cannot speak to.
All these people are driving around to the backside of the neighborhood to get their mail.
Yeah, these guys all here have put their mailboxes here, so if we were to get them all back up here on St. Mary Street and just keep Regis and Sawyer's there, it could go on
That
one
makes as much
side of
sense as
that
a football
entrance.
bat.
You know, everybody on St. Mary's is in that bank, and I don't know, you know, I look around all your new additions, everybody has mailboxes at the most, 2 boxes side by side. The old part of town is the other place where we got these here massive,
I have 3.
That's not quite
also have three.
true.
well, the vast majority,
We don't have that many for sure. I mean,
No,
that's not
that's ridiculous.
typical.
the banks, no, except for where we're at there. Vast majority, as you drive around through the new part of town, you don't see banks.
Again, we
And
don't,
especially you don't see banks in front of any kind of,
At the end of the day, we can't do anything about it. We don't have any say in it. You have all the say. You reign supreme on this. This is all you own it. Those are your boxes in your property.
nobody ever asked me to put them boxes in from day one. Nobody ever approached me from day one.
Chainsaw.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
In 2009, they built a new post office, and being it was so far away, more than a mile, the old town of Marcus was allowed to put boxes in front of their house. The post office dictated to us, 4 houses, the mailbox is gonna be in front of my house. The next 3 houses, the mailbox is going here. The next 2 houses or 4 houses, they're going there. It was completely UPS, the postal service dictating to us where the mailboxes went. That was in 2009. That's why his mailboxes, or not his, but are there for 15 years. That's when they were allowed to put them there.
And when I talked to the postmaster various times about this here, he said, I don't really care where to go, because there was talk here at council meeting now, years ago already, they could go down on your vacant lot down on William Street. And the postmaster was fine with that. After all, there's a bank on St. Joseph Street, right across the street there. He had no problems with that. Because I brought to his attention, I said, how did this end up right here encroaching my driveway? And he didn't have an answer for it. He said, they can be moved.
they can't be.
This was brought up before. This is not the first time I'm bringing this here to city council's attention. It's just that now curb and gutter installed, now it's become a bigger issue.
So mailboxes can be moved, they can be put in other locations, acceptable locations are dictated by the USPS. I do have to point out, I don't know about that specific location, in my 20 years here, that discussion has never come up with the city to my knowledge, but it is on the opposite side of the street, and what we do know is we were talking specifically that block, the postmaster said it has to stay on that side of the street because of the route. And our vacant lot that the city owns is on the opposite side of the street, a block north, so we don't know if that would be permissible or not.
That's what got said to me some years back. I brought it up at the city council meetings also.
When I spoke to Todd, the postmaster, 2 weeks ago, he said it cannot switch sides of the street regardless. It has to stay on.
I don't know about across the street, I didn't say that, but
But even, it needs to stay on that block on the west side, is essentially what he said. On your side of the street, between the two roads that are north and south to you, and that just leaves your two properties.
I couldn't tell you that. I didn't have a chance to visit with him. I did talk to him, he said, in fact, I thought last time we talked, Tom, and Corey was here, I thought me and Marty were gonna be invited into this here conversation when you guys did have this conversation at the postmaster.
It took a lot of effort to get a hold of the postmaster.
I called him several times.
Yeah,
I talked to him.
I don't know, I wasn't aware of that, but I
Yeah.
was just told to call him and try to figure it out, and that's,
In fact, he said to me, he said, I wanna meet with you guys first, so I know what's going on.
My understanding, Charlie, though, was different. My understanding when we talked about this at the last council meeting is that we were gonna go on behalf, we were gonna take the burden of going and contacting the postmaster to find out what they would allow and get back to it without making any promises what the outcomes would be or what we would do based on the feedback, but that we would go ask the question. And that's what we did, and we're reporting that back to the council tonight and then getting direction from them as to what we would report to you guys, what we would tell you guys.
So see, I had an appointment with him, it would've been Wednesday, we had that big snowstorm. And we were supposed to meet that following day, in fact, he said he had a call from the city about these here post office boxes, and he said, I don't know what you're asking or what you're gonna look for, and he said, I'd like to meet with you, Mr. Freitas and Sayer, to see what the city's gonna be asking from us at this time. And I had an appointment set up to meet with the whole snowstorm.
And,
The snowstorm, heavy wet snow here, that's what
yeah, and there's nothing that precludes you or the other property owners who have mailboxes there from meeting with the postmaster.
I was under the understanding that we were gonna go down and we're gonna meet, that's what I thought, maybe I'm wrong, but when I told him about this here, he said, oh, that's what the city's looking for. He said, I still wanna meet with you, Charlie, because I talked to you over the years, different times, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, this is where
This
they've
has been
done
going
it all
on
up.
for
I
a
don't
little
even
while.
know if there's.
It's just that now, the curb cutouts and how the curb is laid out, by far multiplies the problem.
That is an entrance, water tower.
This is, the entrance to the water tower is like right in here.
Is there any mailboxes on St. Mary Street right now?
We don't know.
It's a postmaster
No,
question,
all
maybe.
that area was all
Do you-
dug up.
It's all dug up. Do you recall ever driving out there and seeing a mailbox on St. Mary Street?
not specifically, no, I don't know.
No, there's none outside.
I'm having a hard time with this because if it were me, I would personally take and chop down whatever St. Mary Street mailbox is there and bring them back to their house and say, put this
Figure
where
it
it
out.
goes. Because then you would only have you and Marty on your spot and it would not interfere with the cutout for the right of way. That's where I'm at.
It would only be mine, because Marty's is in front of his house already.
Okay, so then it would just,
Oh, wow.
yep, so we're talking, I mean, from this picture, there's what,
Messaging
5
the
others,
property
6
owner.
others
Well,
that just,
There's by far more than that. There's a lot
I'm
more
like,
than
hey,
that.
can you
None of
tell
them,
me
like I said,
So-
none of them
mailbox
sit
is
there
over
and
there?
feel the same.
Another solution that would be at significant cost to the taxpayer is we could put surmountable curb along a wider stretch of street, which would allow people to drive into their yards but not on their driveways, but that would be a significant cost.
I don't think it's our job to police human behavior that way.
there's 9 other mailboxes there that are not yours, and most of them are from St. Mary Street.
Virtually all of them.
That makes no sense.
That makes absolutely no sense. My other idea was you take them all except for yours, and you take them and bring them all the way south, go around the corner and put them right there in between the back of Marty's backyard and, what does the GSI say? Whoever's house that is. This is, but that would really make St. Mary's Street upset. Well, I'm sorry, I'm moving it out of,
Are you talking about going over on?
another, or
Street?
Greg
On
and Darcy
Paul?
Sawyer, so it'd be right in there, back there.
Be
That's
right
a,
next to the other bank virtually.
yeah.
So staff's recommendation is that those are all really good potential ideas. We're just stating that it's not the city's responsibility to facilitate that. That's a neighborhood discussion.
Is there a way that the city can help facilitate that conversation with the neighbors? Or not?
We will do whatever you tell us to do, but if we facilitate that conversation, we're inserting ourselves into a topic area of which we have no authority, no responsibility, and it will become a city project.
I'll go down there.
I'm not
I mean, I want
endorsed.
Chief
I
to
mean,
answer you, but.
If,
Go for peacekeeping.
I mean, the question is, so we can facilitate it. We can call an open house and have the neighborhood meet on the corner and say, hey, these two property owners don't like these mailboxes here. We want to move them to your yard. And then we will have facilitated it. Any actual solution really doesn't.
I mean, if we just educate them and say, they shouldn't be here, this is your mailbox, you should be taking these in.
But we can't say that because we
Can we
don't.
stop right now, just send them a link to this video, and say, go watch the city council meeting, and, we get to 7:38 PM, move the damn mailboxes to your own property.
He's not wrong.
I would strongly recommend though that before any mailboxes get removed, there's some serious conversations, because when mailboxes have been knocked over or removed, the mail stops getting delivered.
Correct.
And it turns into calling the police to go talk to the post office why they're not delivering the mail, and we're caught in the middle, so.
I'm not realistically gonna go
Right.
chop these down. That's just what I
I'm just
feel like
making
should
that out there in
be.
public.
I'm just thinking that maybe if the staff can't do it, maybe a few of us council members figure out the address numbers that are on these mailboxes, and we go
Each take a
talk to them,
couple.
but I don't know if legally we can do that.
You can do whatever you want as a private individual. You can direct us to facilitate a meeting. We can't guarantee any sort of outcome.
And we can't force any outcome.
Right.
Because it's not our,
We can invite people to be in the same place at the same time to talk about the project, but we can't compel anything.
But if there were two of us that went and knocked on their door,
They might not even know that they can put their mailbox in front
I
of
don't think none of them are aware of what happened, because this here curb cutout is there, and it's causing hardship to other people.
right?
Sort of curb cutout, and the bump up, area, I mean, that's the core of the problem. Is the curb cutout, and as the bump up of the 6-inch curb, where it don't allow people to try to sneak by or do whatever they're gonna do, it forces them to
sure.
cross.
And then we'll educate them that that's not an alleyway either, and they shouldn't be driving on it.
I think
mean-
Josh and I,
Can't enforce that by far.
I think Josh and I have made a decision that we will set a time, we'll go figure out what addresses are on there, and the two of us will go down and have a conversation with the homeowners and just educate them on where their mailboxes currently are, and that's a right of way.
And then what do we do if the mailboxes don't end up moving and they don't?
And,
Listen.
and what if the USPS doesn't allow them to be moved onto that street?
Yeah.
They have to,
That's my concern, is that if we start there, we don't get our desired outcome, we're right back here.
Well, then I'll swing in and talk to the USPS postmaster and ask
I'm
him
sure
if
there's
there's a
other
spot on
alternative
St. Mary we can
spots
put
in the
them.
city of
I think it's a good
Newmarket
place to
to
start.
put mailboxes. I would
I
hope
said,
there is. I would hope
guess,
there is.
I'm guessing the homeowners don't know they can have their boxes in their front yards. And they probably appreciate it instead of driving all the way to the backside of the neighborhood to get the mail to go all the way back. Just a guess.
I agree. I mean, I
Just
think
a follow the
they
leader
saw
thing,
one and they saw
then,
another
yeah,
one.
they
When the
all-
person puts out the recycling tomorrow, when it's not really recycling, I still put mine out, even though I know it's not, but I don't want to be wrong. I mean, and, yeah.
Is that okay if we do some legwork on our part and then,
Anything is wonderful, much appreciated, because right now, it comes down to curb and gutter, how it's laid out, the approach, and the bump ups in between that forces traffic where it shouldn't be. And I know there's not supposed to be traffic there, but God only knows, people are gonna do what they do.
right?
And And I can't patrol
I
too
mean,
far.
and nonetheless, it is a right-of-way for utilities, so it would be nice if they could actually access the right-of-way instead of going onto your driveways.
Because it's pretty mean going up that
Mm-hmm.
alleyway with that huge catch basin, which is built up about probably 18 inches high.
Right.
You virtually have to have a truck to get over it.
I have no problems going into the USPS, talking to them about St. Mary Street between Williams and Webster and say, hey, where can we put a mailbox or two or 9? And, then going with Josh and knocking on the doors and just educating them about that, hey, did you guys know you can actually have your mailbox here?
And
And if you want help, I'm more than willing to participate as much, you know, because I can bring to the thought that, you know, it's blocking this right away, and that's why it's gonna be a problem.
Right.
That's the greatest problem. That's what brought this all to a head.
But it will be their responsibility to move it. And we'll make that clear, because the city's not gonna move it to wherever the USPS says that it can go. But we can at least help facilitate the conversation with your neighbors and say, hey, have you thought about this? That you can have it closer to your house? Hopefully, obviously, we don't know that until we talk to USPS, but,
If you guys need any participation from me, then I'm more than willing to help.
okay.
you're
Are
bigger
you-
than I am,
Are you
so.
currently living in the house, or is it still a rental?
It's still rental.
Okay.
My kids have been staying in and on and off for a while now, so.
Okay. All right.
Okay. All right, well, thank you very much.
Yep. Is that okay, Tom?
You guys can do whatever you want. You can direct us to do whatever you want. It's up to you to decide what our appropriate role. We can just tell you what actual legal authority or responsibility
I don't
that we
wanna
have
get
related to it.
arrested by my own PD for doing something stupid.
And I don't wanna patrol
Chief,
it because I don't wanna.
Josh
meet up
has a
with him.
chainsaw and he's on St. Mary here on Williams.
I might be able to see him through the trees. My
Yeah.
backyard.
I suspect that.
I'm thinking that they will be happy to know that they can go.
Anything from Public Works?
Thank you.
There is not.
Okay. Police, anything from you, chief?
No, well, good.
Right here. Oh, engineering?
There's a report in your packet. If there's any questions or commentary on that, happy to answer any questions.
Any question? No?
Still no jokes yet, though.
Anything else on community development that we haven't already discussed? No? No? Parks, anything on that? Easy?
Nothing, our meeting was canceled this month.
On a related note, and I'll ask Kate to maybe expand on that, there had been this lingering question of whether or not Fire Rescue Days was going to spin off at some point into a separate nonprofit or go under the umbrella of some separate entity from the city. And the city would move maybe into a partnership or member mode. I was advised at the last committee meeting that that is no longer a discussion, and it's anticipated that it will still continue to be a city event for the foreseeable future.
Correct.
We got scale. Anything from that?
Last executive board meeting was primarily a discussion of upcoming meeting topics. One of them is, over the second half of the year, is a discussion related to the fire service, changing fire service with a related issue of rising costs for township contracts. It's an issue, it's a growing issue, but it's also an issue for cities. Things cost more. I was voluntold that I was gonna be helping organize that scale topic and may end up serving on a panel for it, just because within the county, I'm probably one of the most experienced people on the topic. So, the city of Savage is also taking a lead, even though they have no contracted townships on the issue, so they're also helping with it. And actually, the Savage administrator is kind of taking the lead on it, so that helps. The other issue was just the updates within the legislature provided by Tony Albright, the lobbyist for Scale. specifically on the housing legislation. He reported that, you're past all the deadlines for bills and stuff to be heard, but there's that crazy time when you are at the end of the session and there's 5 people making all the decisions about legislation and conference committee and omnibus bills, where stuff that maybe even wasn't previously heard all of a sudden can slip into various pieces of legislation unexpectedly. So right now it's cautious optimism that some of the worst legislation didn't progress past a certain point, but the vigilance aspect of staying aware in case it sneaks in the last few days of session, or what's most likely special session.
Does that cover your service delivery?
Service delivery, just we covered the same topic related to fire. The big issue was we got a presentation related to the insurance consortium, where we are at this particular point in time. We're getting, in the next few months, we're going to get really into the governance aspect of what that would look like. And what it'll really come down to is, what decisions do you have as an individual member? What decisions are made by the larger group? And also talking about who has the votes. Right now, under state law, it's 1 vote per entity, but there's concern that the county specifically, but the larger members, is that fair? While they shouldn't be able to control the whole vote, if they're more than 50% of the participation, is it fair that they only get 1 vote? So those will be some of the things that will be discussed and we get further into. I would expect that I would be coming back to you guys late summer, early fall with a, hey, this is what governance is going to look like. Are we in or out for further discussions?
I-35. Anything for
No
I-35?
dates.
No?
Haven't had a meeting since the last meeting, so nothing there.
All right. Discussion by council. Proclamation policy, sir.
You want me to kick it off? Yeah. So, I mean, this is a really too, I think, just, is there an interest to even look at this topic or this policy? There was a recent request for a proclamation, and which I hadn't even thought about a proclamation in however long, because I don't know how many we've actually done in the 10 years that I've been on council. I probably count on my hand, one hand, which then started getting me thinking of, are we, how many, I wouldn't even know from a staff's perspective, how many do we get requests for proclamations? And is this policy too restrictive? Because the one request, recent one, seemed like a reasonable one, wasn't controversial, whatever, had all the pieces, and then, so it just got me thinking about the policy. So stop there, because we don't need to go into the weeds tonight if there's no interest in revisiting this or looking at it, so.
What about it would you want to change?
Well, my question would be, are we too restrictive? Because like I said, I can't remember the last time we did a proclamation, and there are other cities that do more of them. Now, you can argue if it's good or bad or whatever, but in the spirit of being a good partner to our residents, I don't want it to be hard, or we're the only ones saying no to these. If we don't ever get them, then that's a different topic. But like this one in particular, Lakeville's doing it, New Prague is doing a proclamation, other cities are doing a proclamation, and we're the only ones, or I don't know if we're the only ones. We denied the proclamation because it didn't meet the criteria in our policy. So that's what got me thinking about it. Again, whether that specific proclamation was good or bad or whatever, doesn't really matter to this topic.
So just a little bit of background. For the longest time, we did not have any sort of guidelines. So it was me with whoever was mayor at the time kind of going, well, do we need to ask the council on this? Did the mayor make the call? There wasn't a clear process. And so at the time, Joe and I said we should come to the council and get a clear guidelines on how we handle proclamations. Now, our process may be different than other cities and with regards to how they do it. There were 2, you might say, some key overarching elements that the council and the mayor agreed on. Is one, the mayor did not feel comfortable making the call for the rest of the council about what should be a proclamation and not, that it should have some guidance. Given the fact that you can't call up every council person every time a proclamation comes through, we needed to establish guidelines. They were by nature intended to be exclusive to a certain degree, meaning that it shrank the box to things that would not be problematic. Generally, it had to be associated with something local or associated with the city, couldn't be controversial in nature, et cetera. So the box was made small enough that it was unlikely that something that would be a trigger item fell into the box. So it was intentionally made small enough that it was, everything would be safe, so to speak, and it was things that everybody thought universally everybody would be okay with. The challenge is as you start to grow the box, there's something that may check the same criteria, but might be an issue with it. And there's a discussion. There is no perfect, there's nothing perfect about how you approach it. It's up to the council and how they would want to approach it. But those were kind of the overarching sentiments when we developed the policy.
And maybe just for additional context, you know, so this particular request was from a teacher at Eagle View, Ms. Drazen, who does special ed, and she does a whole bunch of other things there. And she brings therapy dogs into the school on a regular basis, over to the Mayo Clinic in New Prague, Malistrana, the assisted living in New Prague, the library here in town. And so she is super active. She's super passionate about it, and she's just an awesome person. I believe her son lives in town, is also a teacher at Eagle View, so there was that connection to the community. So this was a request for April 30th for National Pet Therapy Day. And she's so passionate about it, and it seemed like it fit. Resident, at least a connection to a resident here teaching at the school in town. So that's where I started questioning, why can't we support something like this? It didn't seem controversial.
So in that case, none of that information was provided in the request, in
But
part.
it was, in the sense of, when I forwarded it to everybody, it included that information. So, and that was sent, well, and it was sent to info@ci.enm, our email on March 23rd. And so I just read the email from that. So, and that's where, again, I don't know if they didn't fill out the form, and because there's certain things, you know, in our policy, it says you have to include your name and check all the boxes. So, I mean.
Yeah, and related to the nature of the issue, currently we don't get a lot of these requests coming in. It tends to be really cyclical, and quite honestly, it tends to be whatever's happening in the larger world at the time. When things are more political, you tend to get more of them, and there's different ones. There's things like this that I think everybody would agree that is non-controversial, but somebody in Ely asking us to pass a resolution related to the preservation of the boundary waters is probably not controversial either, but is it in our lane and is it local? Those are some of the things that the policy tried to sort out. So anytime you have the box at a certain size, there's gonna be something that everybody would agree, you know, wouldn't be a problem that's outside the box. The problem is there might be other requests that check the same criteria that everybody would not agree would be perfectly safe. And that's the challenge of just having the guidelines. We tend to not have a lot of local requests for local things. Usually it's something like this, or something that's related to like a larger policy issue, and some special interest is looking for the city council. The other thing I'd ask the council to think about is, who are you doing it for? Generally, be honest, we might have 7 views of the meeting tonight, and half of them are gonna be staff maybe looking at it. So when you're doing the proclamation, what's the purpose? It's usually so that some entity can take those and then take them to push some sort of a policy, or be able to say, hey, these people supported it. Or to be able to hold you guys as public officials accountable that you publicly supported something. And then you have stuff like Mr. Baltus being the oldest living male in the United States type of item, which is just, and you are doing it for that person. So if we want to look at it, that would be the one thing I'd ask you to think about ahead of time. What's the purpose of doing the proclamation? Or recognizing an individual, because that will set the framework for any policy that you might have related to it.
Josh, if you wanna review it, I'm okay reviewing it.
Yeah, I mean, and I didn't read the policy in great detail. So if there's even an appeal process or some process, because like this one just seemed like a no-brainer. It's like, okay, why did we deny that? Or not to do it? Maybe deny is not too strong of a word, but We didn't go through with it. Maybe we didn't have all the information, so did we follow up and ask for that information? Just, you know,
We don't. We just don't, we don't go quiz people about it. We take it based on the face
but did
value
we
of what was
communicate
submitted.
even? So even the customer service aspect, my understanding is she may not have even gotten followed up on it. So then that's a customer service thing that I just,
And I'll be honest, we probably didn't. We don't respond. We get these things, they come in from all over the
but you
place.
just said we don't get a lot of these on a regular basis.
No, but when we get them, we don't respond, because when we do get them, they're usually clearly outside of it. It has been our practice not to respond to them. In a lot of cases, they send them out blanket to a large number of organizations, and they're not expecting a response. So we simply, if we're not gonna do it, we simply
But
don't
we have a
respond
policy
to it.
to do it. So I guess this is where I'm gonna really push back, because I think then we're just saying we don't do any proclamations, and we're not gonna respond to anything that comes in via email for a proclamation, even if it checks all the boxes, is what I heard you just say. And maybe that's not what you intended to say, but it's like,
No,
we
if we
just
do a
ignore them.
proclamation, we'll provide them with a copy of the proclamation, but we get, it's like getting, I hate to say it, but it's kinda like getting junk mail. You get this stuff in your inbox with, generally it's just broadcast proclamation requests from organizations across the spectrum of people they're asking to do it. And so we don't, when we're not, if it's something that doesn't meet our criteria, we simply don't respond to it. If you want us to, we can.
Well, I mean, this one, again, I don't know who monitors that email inbox. I mean, if anybody would have read it, they would have known that it has the connection to the community and the names of the people that, you know, I mean, we know names of folks too, so Mary and Mr., I don't even know his name, Mr. Grayson, at the school, yeah. Yeah, I mean, so it's just where it caught me off guard of like, well, why are we the only one that's not responding to you on this? And that's where it flagged for me, so. I'm making a big deal out of it for probably no reason, but kind of.
In my experience, a lot of other communities do not have as formal of a process with regards to what gets put in, and a lot of those decisions are made by that individual, and there was a conscious decision made by our organization that that's not how we were gonna do it.
And it makes sense to have guidelines and a
Yep.
criteria. Because I don't even know if there's anything wrong with the policy. The policy might be fine, we just gotta act on it and implement it then, I guess, is also what I'm hearing, so.
This one may have fallen through the cracks.
This one may have-
No, this one did not meet the criteria. We specifically examined the request against the policy. In fact, Linda got it, and she asked, she was like, don't think this meets it, what's your opinion? And I concurred with her assessment based on the information that came in on the request.
Okay.
We don't know some of those other things. The person does not live in town. We went as far as to check our utility records to see if they show up as a resident of the community. They said that they do show the dog at Eagle View, but that does not mean that they are Eagle View or not. There's nothing to indicate that I was a teacher. There's nothing to indicate that this was a formal relationship or anything. So when we went through, based on the actual information that was provided, there may be supplemental information like I know the community. We don't have that, and we can only respond to what was in the specific request itself. And we went through the criteria, and we didn't see anything that clearly checked the boxes.
We would have known.
Well, and, I mean, and I know, now we're belaboring the point, we have another mailbox issue. Like, what I would suggest then is we follow up with an email that maybe doesn't have all the information. Fill out the form. Here's the form. Here's if we have a form, we have it in the criteria of the policy. Enter in all this information, then we can make a decision based on that full amount of information.
And that may be my fault. I've tried to provide better customer service by not making people jump through all those hoops to fill out the form. And
Right.
that's my fault. That was an intentional departure from the policy.
Well, so, and the reason I got it is my wife is a long-term sub up at the school. So Mary asked my wife I'm not hearing anything back from the city, and can you help me do this? Then I had him forward to me the email. That's how I got it.
Okay.
What I'm hearing is two immediate things we could do is the council, and I'm reading into this, would like us to actively respond to every inquiry with it's going, or if it's not going, advise them it's not going and why. And that you would like to require us that they fill out a formal form in the future, so that we can make sure we get all of the required information to properly assess it.
I just wanna make it easy for residents or somebody that has a connection to the community to be able to do this. And for staff to then be able to facilitate it, cause on
If-
one hand, I'm hearing us say, we don't ever get these, we don't ever do them, but then on the other hand, I'm hearing we say we get them all the time and it's like junk mail, and the two don't jive
If-
in my brain.
If they are a resident of the community, they automatically check one of the boxes, so unless they check a box that automatically excludes it, they would have the ability to do it.
I don't think we necessarily need a form, but a response with this, like the end of the policy has, a proclamation request should include da, 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 da. And then if they respond with all that information and it checks the boxes, carry on.
Yep, under the
And if it doesn't,
policy,
like,
if
copy
somebody
paste
was a
thing.
resident of the community and they had made the request and say, I'm a resident of the community, I think this is important, they would have checked the boxes and it would have moved forward.
If I may, it wouldn't hurt to have a form where each of the criteria are there and they can just check them off and then you'd kind of, you
Or
can
even a
follow up.
checklist, yeah.
Yeah.
So then you know if the application is complete and we have to act upon it or.
Which
not.
criteria do you meet here?
Yeah.
And then you can follow up with them.
Yeah, and happy to do that, but the intent, and it was conscious, and it was at my direction, was told staff, don't make them fill out the form because it's jumping through hoops. So we were intending to actually make it easier and reduce barriers for individuals.
No, and I'm not trying to impugn any motives or anything like that, so like, I'm not.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying that if we're not doing it, it was my call, and I'll own that. But if you want us to do it, we're more than happy to take that approach.
Yeah, I mean, until we're getting inundated and it's like, oh my God, we're getting 50,000 proclamations every day or every week, it's a different discussion. That's not what I'm hearing.
We're not currently. There have been points in time where I was getting like multiples a week. We're not, that has not been the case for the last few years.
God, we beat that one like the mailboxes. Jeez. Motion to adjourn, unless anybody else has.
Now, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Tom, I just forwarded you an email.
I missed you guys.